Millionaire rescues homeless family, then breaks down when he discovers their true identity. What compels a reclusive millionaire to stop for a homeless family shivering in the rain? He offered them shelter out of pity, but when a hidden clue reveals the father's shocking true identity, it shatters a 20-year-old mystery and exposes a devastating family secret. You won't believe who he really is. Like this story, subscribe for more incredible tales, and listen now to hear the full emotional journey. The rain outside mirrored the persistent drizzle in Gabriel Voss's soul. From the expansive windows of his study, overlooking the manicured, lamplit grounds of his estate near Boston, the world appeared shrouded in gray mist. Inside, the mansion was silent, impeccably furnished, yet echoing with an emptiness that seemed to swallow sound. Gabriel, CEO of Voss Biotech and a man whose name commanded respect in the high-stakes world of pharmaceutical innovation, sat staring not at the complex molecular diagrams on his screen, but at the reflection of a solitary man in the darkening glass. He was 52, fit, sharp-featured, his dark hair threaded with distinguished silver, his suits flawlessly tailored. By every external measure, he was a success. Voss Biotech, built from the foundations laid by his ambitious father, was now a global leader, its stock price soaring, its labs producing life-saving drugs. Yet, since his wife, Emily, had succumbed to cancer 3 years ago, the vast house felt less like a home and more like a beautifully appointed museum of a life once lived. The silence pressed in, amplifying a loneliness that wealth couldn't fill. Beneath that recent grief lay an older, more complicated sorrow. 20 years. It felt like an eternity since his younger brother, Nathaniel, had walked out of his life. They had been young men then, inheriting the fledgling biotech company their father had started. Gabriel, driven and pragmatic, saw the path to success paved with aggressive research, competitive pricing, and unwavering focus on the bottom line, the gospel according to their father. Nathaniel, 5 years younger, idealistic, passionate, saw something different. He saw the potential to alleviate suffering, to prioritize affordable access, to channel profits into humanitarian research, into helping the underserved communities their innovations could reach. Their differing philosophies clashed inevitably, culminating in a bitter argument in this very study. Gabriel remembered Nathaniel's impassioned pleas, his accusations that Gabriel was betraying the potential for good, becoming just like their ruthless father. He remembered his own angry retorts, calling Nathaniel naive, unrealistic, irresponsible. The fight ended with Nathaniel declaring he wanted no part of a company driven solely by greed, renouncing his share, walking out the door, and vanishing completely from Gabriel's life. In the years that followed, Gabriel told himself Nathaniel had made his choice. He focused on building Voss Biotech into the powerhouse it was today, burying his guilt under layers of achievement. He'd made discreet inquiries early on, hitting dead ends. As time passed, the silence hardened into a grim assumption. Nathaniel, unprepared for the harsh realities of the world outside their privileged bubble, had likely failed, perhaps even perished somewhere, a victim of his own naive idealism. The thought was a constant, low-level ache, a counterpoint to his outward success. Emily had sometimes urged him to try harder to find Nathaniel, but Gabriel, perhaps afraid of what he might discover, or simply unwilling to reopen old wounds, had always resisted. Now, alone in the silent mansion, the ghost of his lost brother felt more present than ever. He pushed away from his desk, the complex data on the screen suddenly meaningless. He needed air, a change of scenery, anything to escape the oppressive quiet. He decided on impulse to drive himself. He often sent scouts, But tonight he felt a restless urge to see for himself a potential redevelopment zone. His team had flagged a rundown industrial area bordering a struggling residential neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. Perhaps focusing on the tangible challenge of urban renewal, even from a purely commercial angle, would distract him from the intangible ghosts within his own walls. He grabbed his keys and headed out into the cold, driving rain, unaware that this detour, born of restlessness and buried grief, was about to intersect dramatically with the past he thought was long buried. The sleek lines of Gabriel's sedan cut through the rain-slick streets, leaving the affluent suburbs behind and entering a part of the city characterized by boarded-up factories, graffiti-scarred brick walls, and neglected row houses. The rain intensified, turning the late afternoon gloom into premature twilight. Streetlights cast hazy, distorted halos on the wet pavement. Gabriel slowed, navigating unfamiliar streets, his mind automatically assessing property values, infrastructure challenges, the potential for lucrative transformation. It was then, as he turned onto a particularly bleak side street lined with derelict warehouses, that he saw them. Huddled under the flimsy, rusted awning of a boarded-up loading dock, seeking meager shelter from the driving wind and rain, was a small family. Even from a distance, their desperation was palpable. A man, painfully thin and gaunt, stood trying to shield a woman who sat slumped on the cold concrete, her face buried in her hands. Beside her, pressed close for warmth, were two small children, a boy and a younger girl, shivering uncontrollably beneath a single, threadbare blanket that looked utterly inadequate against the raw, damp cold. Gabriel's first instinct was a familiar, automatic dismissal. Homelessness was an endemic urban problem, tragic but vast, something addressed through charitable donations and civic policy, not individual intervention on a rainy night. He should drive on, focus on his objective. But something made him hesitate. Perhaps it was the raw vulnerability of the children, their small forms trembling in the cold. Perhaps it was the memory of his late wife, Emily, who had possessed a compassionate streak he often admired but rarely emulated. Perhaps it was the echoing loneliness within his own life, suddenly mirrored in the desperate isolation of this family unit. He couldn't simply drive past. Not tonight. With a sigh that was part irritation, part resignation, Gabriel pulled the car over to the curb a short distance away, the powerful engine humming quietly in the downpour. He watched them for a moment, his heart twisting with an unfamiliar pang of empathy. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed a large umbrella from the back seat and stepped out into the deluge. As he approached, the man looked up, his eyes wide with apprehension, instinctively stepping further in front of the woman and children. He looked weary beyond his years, his face etched with hardship, but his stance was protective. "Excuse me," Gabriel began, keeping his voice calm and non-threatening, holding the umbrella slightly forward to offer them some minimal extra shelter. "I saw you from my car. You can't stay out here in this storm. It's not safe, especially for the children." The man flinched slightly, suspicion warring with desperation in his eyes. "We're all right, mister," he stammered, his voice hoarse. "Just waiting for the rain to let up a bit." "This isn't letting up anytime soon," Gabriel stated matter-of-factly, gesturing towards the bleak sky. "Look, I have a large house not far from here. Plenty of room. Let me take you somewhere warm and dry. Get the children some food, just for the night, until the storm passes." The man exchanged a look with the woman, who had lifted her head now. Her face was pale and haggard, dark circles under her eyes, but she met Gabriel's gaze with a flicker of wary intelligence. She pulled the blanket tighter around the children, who peered out with large, frightened eyes. We ain't got nothing to pay you," the man said, his voice rough with shame. We don't take charity we can't repay. Gabriel felt another pang, this time of impatience mixed with pity. Pride was a luxury these people couldn't afford right now. This isn't about payment, he said firmly, trying to keep the edge out of his voice. It's about getting your children out of this dangerous weather. Please, I won't harm you. Just let me help you get warm and dry. He looked directly at the children, his expression softening slightly. They must be freezing. The little girl let out a small, shivering whimper, burying her face against her mother's side. That small sound seemed to break the parents' hesitation. The woman looked at the man, a silent communication passing between them. He gave a barely perceptible nod. "All right, mister," the man said, his voice heavy with resignation and reluctance. Just for tonight. For the kids." "Thank you," Gabriel said, relief washing over him. He quickly ushered them toward his car, shielding them as best he could with the umbrella. He helped the woman, who introduced herself quietly as Clara, and the two children, Leo and Lily, into the warm, dry back seat, while the man, giving his name as James, slid stiffly into the front passenger seat, clutching a small, sodden bundle likely all their worldly possessions. As Gabriel drove away from the desolate street, the awkward silence in the car was filled only by the rhythmic sweep of the wipers and the soft sniffles of the exhausted children in the back. He glanced occasionally at the man beside him, noting the worn clothes, the calloused hands, the deep lines of worry etched around his eyes. Just another family down on their luck, he told himself. A temporary act of charity on a miserable night. He had no idea that this chance encounter, this impulsive act of kindness, was about to unravel the carefully constructed narrative of his own life. The arrival at the Voss estate was met with stunned silence from the back seat. As Gabriel turned the Bentley through imposing stone gateposts and drove up the long, winding driveway towards the brightly lit mansion, Leo and Lily pressed their faces against the windows, their eyes wide with disbelief. The sheer scale of the place, the manicured lawns stretching into the rainy darkness, the house itself looming like something out of fairy tale, was utterly beyond their comprehension. Clara pulled them back gently, murmuring something soothing, her own face pale and tense. James, in the front seat, stared straight ahead, his expression unreadable, seemingly overwhelmed. Gabriel felt a pang of discomfort, realizing how intimidating his home must appear to people who had just been sheltering under a loading dock. He brought the car to a stop under the covered entrance and quickly ushered them inside, away from the persistent rain. The vast marble foyer, with its soaring ceiling, grand staircase, and hushed, echoing silence, only seemed to amplify their unease. Mrs. Burton, Gabriel's discreet and efficient housekeeper, appeared as if by magic, her expression professionally neutral, but her eyes widening slightly as she took in the bedraggled family. "Mrs. Burton," Gabriel said quietly, "our guests have been caught in the storm. Please show them to the main guest suite in the West Wing. Arrange for hot baths, dry clothes, perhaps some of Emily's unworn donation items would fit, and a simple, warm meal to be sent up. Soup, sandwiches, whatever cook can prepare quickly." "Of course, Mr. Voss," Mrs. Burton replied smoothly, already turning to lead the way. "Right this way, please." Clara hesitated, looking at Gabriel uncertainly. "Sir, this is too much. We just needed shelter." "Nonsense," Gabriel said, trying for a reassuring tone. "You need rest, warmth, and food, especially the children." He knelt slightly to address Leo and Lily directly. "You go with Mrs. Burton. She'll help you get warm and dry. There are comfortable beds waiting." Lily hid behind her mother's legs, but Leo, after a cautious glance at his parents, gave a small nod. James gently nudged his wife forward. "Go on, Clara. Get the kids settled." As Mrs. Burton led the family away up the grand staircase, Gabriel retreated to his study, pouring himself a stiff drink. The silence of the mansion felt different now, charged with the presence of strangers, with the echoes of childhood desperation he had just witnessed. He felt unsettled, restless. This act of charity felt significant, somehow, though he couldn't articulate why. Later that evening, after ensuring the family was settled and had eaten, Gabriel went to the guest suite. He found James sitting alone in the suite's small living area, staring out the window. Clara and the children were already asleep in the adjacent bedrooms, exhausted. "Are they all right?" Gabriel asked quietly, entering the room. James started slightly, then nodded. "Yes, sir. Thank you." They fell asleep almost instantly. Clean, warm beds, they ain't known that for a long time. His voice was thick with emotion. Gabriel indicated a chair opposite James. "Sit down, James. If you feel up to it, perhaps you can tell me a little more. How did things get so difficult for your family?" James sank into the chair, running a hand over his weary face. He hesitated, then began to speak, his voice low, halting at first, then gathering momentum as the story poured out. He spoke of having a decent job as a project manager for a small construction company that focused on sustainable, low-income housing. He believed in their mission. But the company struggled financially, corners were cut by the owners, though James insisted he never compromised safety, and eventually, it collapsed into bankruptcy about 2.5 years ago. He lost his job. His savings were wiped out trying to cover debts and final paycheck for his crew. They lost their rented house shortly after. "Thought I'd find something else quick," James continued, staring at his worn hands. "Got skills, good references, but construction dried up for a bit. Then Clara got sick bronchitis, couldn't shake it. Couldn't afford doctors or medicine without insurance. Tri-day labor, odd jobs, but it wasn't enough, especially with 2 little ones." His voice broke. "One thing leads to another. Shelters are full or feel unsafe. You end up out there." He gestured vaguely towards the window, towards the rainy darkness. "Been about 2 years now. Just trying to keep the kids safe. Keep moving." He didn't mention specific locations or past connections, keeping the narrative focused on the recent hardship. Gabriel listened, his heart unexpectedly heavy. James's story, though vague on details, resonated with a plausibility born of desperation. He saw not just a statistic, but a man trying to protect his family against impossible odds. The waste of potential, the sheer bad luck, it struck a chord. "That sounds incredibly difficult," Gabriel said sincerely. "You have skills, experience. It shouldn't be this hard to get back on your feet." An idea began to form in his mind, driven perhaps by genuine sympathy, perhaps by a desire to fill the echoing quiet of his own life, or perhaps by a subconscious stirring he didn't yet recognize. "James," he said, leaning forward, "I might have a proposition for you. Voss Biotech is always expanding. We need competent people, not just in the labs, but in project management, logistics, facilities. I could offer you a position, an assistant role initially, perhaps in facilities management, while you get settled. Good salary, benefits, insurance for your family." James looked up, stunned. "A job? Sir, I don't know what to say." And Gabriel continued, pressing his advantage. "This estate has a guest house. Small but comfortable, private. It's empty. You and your family could stay there, rent-free, until you're properly back on your feet. Give the children stability. Get Clara the medical attention she needs." James stared at him, overwhelmed, tears welling in his eyes. "Mr. Voss, why? Why would you do all this for strangers?" Gabriel hesitated. Why was he doing this? Let's just say, he deflected, I appreciate honesty and resilience. And frankly, he added, a touch of his own loneliness seeping through, this house could use a little more life in it. Consider it an investment. In potential. James nodded slowly, trying to absorb the magnitude of the offer. A job, a home, safety. It was more than he had dared to hope for. Yes, Mr. Voss, he said, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you. We accept. We'll work hard. We won't let you down. I know you won't, Gabriel said, feeling a surprising sense of satisfaction. He had provided a haven, offered a lifeline. It felt good. Concrete. He stood up. Get some rest, James. You start Monday. We'll get your family settled in the guest house tomorrow. He left the suite, unaware that the man he knew as James, the man whose potential he was investing in, was not a stranger at all, but his own lost brother, harboring a secret that would soon shatter Gabriel's carefully ordered world. A tentative sense of normalcy began to permeate the Voss estate over the following week. Nathaniel, still operating under the guise of James, moved his family into the comfortable guest house nestled amongst the trees at the edge of the property. Clara, relieved to be warm and safe, focused on settling the children, her energy slowly returning now that the constant stress of survival had eased. Leo and Lily, initially timid and wide-eyed, gradually started to explore their new surroundings, fascinated by the sprawling gardens, the unfamiliar comforts of reliable meals and soft beds, though they still clung closely to their parents. Nathaniel began his job at Voss Biotech. Gabriel had placed him in the facilities department, a role that required practical skills and organizational ability, but kept him largely out of the executive suites initially. Nathaniel tackled the work with quiet competence, learning quickly, his innate intelligence evident despite his deliberate efforts to appear unassuming. He kept his head down, mindful of maintaining his cover, yet occasionally, during meetings about site maintenance or expansion logistics, he offered insights or asked questions that revealed a sharper business acumen than expected from someone in his position. Gabriel noted these instances with interest, impressed by James's potential. Gabriel found himself making excuses to visit the guest house, often bringing small toys for the children or inquiring about Clara's health. He had arranged for his personal physician to see her, ensuring she received proper care. He enjoyed talking with Leo about school. He'd quickly enrolled them both in a good local elementary school, and watching Lily draw intricate pictures on the patio. Their presence was a balm to his own loneliness, filling the estate with sounds and energy it hadn't known in years. He felt a strange, protective fondness for this family he had taken in, particularly for James, whose quiet dignity and resilience reminded him, uncomfortably at times, of the brother he had lost. There was something in James's eyes, a familiar seriousness, a way he held himself, but Gabriel dismissed it as projection, a trick of his own guilty conscience. The reveal happened unexpectedly on a Thursday evening. Gabriel had brought home some preliminary blueprints for a potential lab expansion and, needing a second opinion on site access logistics, walked over to the guest house after dinner. He found Nathaniel, James, sitting at the small kitchen table, helping Leo with his math homework while Clara read a story to Lily on the couch nearby. James, sorry to disturb you, Gabriel began, spreading the large blueprint sheets out on the table. Could you take a quick look at this? I value your practical perspective on truck access here. Nathaniel leaned over the table, his attention immediately focused, tracing the proposed routes with his finger, pointing out a potential bottleneck near the existing loading docks. As he bent forward, the worn collar of his simple button-down shirt gaped slightly. Hanging against his chest, partially visible, was a tarnished silver chain bearing a distinctive pendant. Gabriel's eyes snagged on it. He stopped mid-sentence, his breath catching. He leaned closer, peering intently. It couldn't be, but it was. A silver pendant, intricately cast in the shape of a compass rose, the needle pointing steadfastly north. He knew every line, every detail. He had commissioned it from a local artisan jeweler for Nathaniel's 21st birthday, 20-odd years ago, a symbol for his adventurous younger brother to always find his way. Nathaniel had loved it, worn it constantly, until the day he walked out. Gabriel felt the blood drain from his face. His hands began to tremble. He stared at the pendant, then up at the face of the man he knew as James, the familiar set of the jaw beneath the beard Nathaniel now wore, the lines etched by hardship around eyes that were startlingly, achingly familiar once you truly looked. The quiet competence, the underlying idealism that sometimes slipped through, the resemblance he had dismissed, it all crashed together with the undeniable proof hanging around the man's neck. "That necklace," Gabriel whispered, his voice tight, strangled. "Where did you get that?" Nathaniel froze, his hand instinctively flying to his chest, covering the pendant. He looked up, saw the look on Gabriel's face, the shock, the dawning recognition, the raw emotion, and knew the charade was over. His shoulders slumped, the energy seeming to drain out of him. Clara, sensing the sudden tension, looked over from the couch, her eyes widening in alarm. Nathaniel slowly met Gabriel's gaze, his own eyes filling with a mixture of shame, fear, and profound weariness. "You recognize it?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Recognize it?" Gabriel choked out, taking an involuntary step back. "I gave it to you for your 21st birthday." He stared intently at the man before him, the years of hardship melting away in his mind's eye, revealing the face of his lost brother. "Nathaniel? Is it really you?" Nathaniel couldn't speak. He simply nodded, tears beginning to stream down his face, tracing paths through the lines of hardship. He bowed his head, unable to meet his brother's eyes. Clara rushed over, putting a protective arm around her husband, her face pale. "We didn't know what to do, Gabriel," she whispered frantically. "After that fight, you were so angry. We heard you'd become so successful we were ashamed. Living like we couldn't." Gabriel wasn't listening to her. His world had tilted, fractured, reformed. Nathaniel, alive, here, standing before him after 20 years of silence, 20 years of presumed loss. He stumbled back, collapsing onto a nearby chair, burying his face in his hands. Sobs racked his body, overwhelming relief, crushing guilt, heartbreak, disbelief, joy, a torrent of emotions held back for 2 decades, unleashed by the sight of a tarnished silver compass rose. His brother was alive. He had found his brother. The small guest house living room seemed to hold its breath, charged with the volatile mix of shock, relief, and 20 years of unspoken history. Leo and Lily, sensing the intense adult emotions, crept closer to their mother, their eyes wide with confusion and nascent fear. Gabriel finally lifted his head, his face streaked with tears, his eyes locking onto Nathaniel, who still stood with his head bowed, shame radiating from him. "Alive," Gabriel whispered, the word encompassing a universe of relief and pain. "All this time you were alive." He surged up from the chair, crossing the small space in 2 strides, and pulled Nathaniel into a fierce, desperate hug. Nathaniel stiffened in surprise, then slowly, hesitantly, returned the embrace, clinging to his older brother as decades of isolation and hardship seemed to wash over him. They stood there for a long moment, 2 brothers reunited by chance, bound by blood and a shared, complicated past, weeping openly. "I thought you were dead," Gabriel choked out, pulling back slightly, but keeping his hands firmly on Nathaniel's shoulders, as if afraid he might vanish again. I looked early on. I tried, but Father said the trail went cold. I assumed the worst, that your idealism, that the world had broken you. Nathaniel shook his head, wiping his eyes, unable to meet Gabriel's intense gaze. It almost did, Gabe, he admitted, his voice thick with unshed tears. It almost did. Over the next few hours, punctuated by Clara's quiet interjections and the children's wide-eyed observation, the full story tumbled out. Nathaniel spoke of his initial attempts to use his small inheritance to fund charitable projects, microloans in developing countries, sustainable farming initiatives, ventures that failed due to his inexperience, lack of infrastructure, and perhaps encounters with corruption. He spoke of trying to find work with nonprofits, only to become disillusioned by bureaucracy or finding his ethical stance put him at odds with funders or management. He drifted, taking low-paying jobs, his savings dwindling. He met Clara during this period, a kind, compassionate nurse working in a free clinic where he volunteered. They fell in love quickly, drawn together by shared ideals and a desire for a simpler, more meaningful life. They married, had Leo, then Lily, finding joy in their small family despite their constant financial struggles. Nathaniel confessed he never stopped thinking about Gabriel, never stopped missing him, but pride in the memory of their bitter argument held him back. "You were so successful," he murmured, "building this empire. I felt like a failure. How could I come crawling back after walking out, after everything I'd said? Especially once I had Clara and the kids, I couldn't burden you with my failures." The final blow came 2 years ago, when the small community health center where Nathaniel had finally found fulfilling work lost its funding and closed abruptly. Simultaneously, Clara had a health crisis requiring expensive treatment they couldn't afford. Wiped out financially, evicted from their small apartment, they spiraled into homelessness. The past 2 years, a desperate scramble for survival, prioritizing the children's safety above all else. Coming back to the Boston area was a last resort, hoping for better shelter options, never dreaming they would literally land on Gabriel's doorstep. Gabriel listened, his heart aching with guilt and regret. While he had been building Voss Biotech, insulated by wealth, his brother had been fighting, struggling, suffering. "Why didn't you call, Nat?" he asked brokenly. "Pride? Anger? Didn't you think I'd want to know? That I worry? I thought you'd moved on," Nathaniel whispered. "That you agreed with Father that my ideas were foolish, that I wasn't cut out for the real world. After I walked out, I assumed that door was closed forever." "No," Gabriel said fiercely. "No, it was never closed. Not really." He confessed his own regrets. The way their father's relentless focus on profit had shaped him. The loneliness after Emily died. The gnawing feeling that something fundamental was missing from his successful life. "I missed you, Nat. Terribly." He then turned his attention fully to Leo and Lily, kneeling before them again, his expression softening. "And you too," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I am so sorry. I'm your Uncle Gabriel. I didn't know about you, but I promise I will make up for lost time." He saw Clara's cautious hope, Nathaniel's relieved tears. He saw his own family miraculously return to him. The reconciliation was immediate, profound. The awkwardness of their initial benefactor-recipient relationship dissolved, replaced by the complex, messy, but undeniable bond of family. Gabriel insisted they move into the main mansion immediately. "This house needs you," he stated simply, silencing their protests. "It needs laughter. It needs family." He didn't explicitly confront the memory of his father in that moment. The man was long gone, buried with his secrets. But Gabriel made a silent vow. He would honor Nathaniel's values. He would reshape Voss Biotech. and he would pour all the love and resources he possessed into ensuring his brother and his newly found family never knew hardship again. The past couldn't be changed, but the future, suddenly, felt full of possibility. The transition wasn't instantaneous, but the shift was profound. The vast, echoing rooms of the Voss mansion gradually began to feel less like a museum and more like a home, filled with the sounds of children's laughter, the scent of Clara's simple but delicious cooking. She insisted on helping in the kitchen, finding comfort in familiar tasks, and the low murmur of the brothers' late-night conversations as they bridged the 20-year gap. Gabriel threw himself into making up for lost time, especially with Leo and Lily. He delighted in discovering their personalities, Leo's quiet intensity and artistic talent. So like the mother he barely remembered, and Lily's bright curiosity and infectious giggle. He read them bedtime stories, attended school functions with pride, and patiently answered their endless questions about the family they were just beginning to understand. He learned that being Uncle Gabriel, soon shortened to Uncle Gabe, was infinitely more rewarding than being Mr. Voss, CEO. Nathaniel, meanwhile, slowly shed the weary resignation of James. With stability, proper nutrition, and the relief of safety, his physical health improved. The lines of hardship on his face seemed to soften, revealing more of the thoughtful, idealistic man Gabriel remembered. Accepting Gabriel's help wasn't easy for him. His pride still stung, and the shame of his failures lingered. But Gabriel refused to let him retreat. "We're partners now, Nat," Gabriel insisted one evening, discussing the future, in life, and maybe in business too, if you're willing. He didn't just offer Nathaniel a job. He offered him a purpose that aligned with his long-held values. Gabriel created a new, independent division within Voss Biotech, the Voss Humanitarian Initiative tasked with developing affordable diagnostics and treatments for neglected diseases affecting impoverished communities and ensuring equitable access to their existing medications globally. He asked Nathaniel to lead it. "You were right. 20 years ago," Gabriel admitted, humility coloring his tone. "Profit isn't everything. We have the resources, the knowledge, to do immense good. I lost sight of that. Help me find a way back, Nat. Help me make Voss Biotech something we can both be proud of." Nathaniel, seeing the genuine change in his brother, the opportunity to finally implement the vision he had fought for decades ago, agreed. He poured his energy into the new role, his sharp mind and deeply felt compassion proving a powerful combination. The brothers found a new synergy, their differing strengths complementing each other. Gabriel's business acumen and resources, Nathaniel's ethical compass and innovative idealism. Life settled into a new, richer pattern. Clara, her health restored, became the warm heart of the home, her quiet strength a grounding force for them all. Leo and Lily thrived, blossoming in the security of a stable home and the love of their parents and their devoted uncle. Gabriel, no longer isolated in his success, discovered the profound joy of family dinners, messy weekend breakfasts, and the simple comfort of knowing he was no longer alone. To address the issue that had so deeply affected his brother's family, Gabriel established the Nathaniel's Home Foundation. Its mission was clear: to combat family homelessness through a holistic approach, providing not just temporary shelter, but transitional housing, job training tailored to parents, educational support, and child care for children, and mental health services. They funded innovative programs designed to break the cycle of poverty and instability. The first housing complex they built, providing dignified apartments and comprehensive support services, was dedicated with Leo and Lily proudly helping their father and uncle cut the ribbon. One sunny afternoon, Gabriel was kicking a soccer ball in the expansive backyard with Leo, now a bright-eyed 7-year-old. Leo paused, looking up at him seriously. "Uncle Gabe." "Yeah, buddy. Are you my dad's dad?" he asked, still trying to piece together the family tree. Gabriel chuckled, scooping the boy up into a hug. "No, Leo. I'm your dad's brother. That makes me your uncle. But," he added, his voice softening, "I love you like you're my own son. Just like I love your dad and your sister and your mom." Lily ran over, demanding a hug too. As Gabriel held his niece and nephew close, Nathaniel and Clara walked out on a patio, smiling. Nathaniel met Gabriel's eyes over the children's heads, a look of profound gratitude and shared understanding passing between them. "He saved us, you know," Clara whispered to Nathaniel later, watching Gabriel push the laughing children on a swing set he'd recently installed. First from the rain, then from everything else. Nathaniel put his arm around her, pulling her close. "We saved each other," he murmured. The rainy night encounter, born from desperation and a moment of unexpected compassion, had done more than rescue a family from a brink. It had rescued Gabriel from his loneliness, redeemed Nathaniel's idealism, healed a 20-year rift, and built a future where the Voss name stood not just for profit, but for purpose, family, and the enduring power of second chances. The echoes in the mansion were finally replaced by the sounds of home.